Well, hello, my friends. We're back. This is the second one of these I'm recording today, so my energy is everywhere. It's flying across the ether, and I am delighted to be sitting down with another awesome individual for my Thursday. This is Benjamin Bowles, who I've known for a brief amount of time, and I cannot wait to get to know better. Ben, how you doing?
I'm well, thank you, Tom. Looking forward to the conversation. Thank you for having me on.
My absolute pleasure. This is starting to turn into Tom talks to his friends,
Sounds
which,
pretty
to be
good.
fair, is kind of a great way to run a podcast. So, I know what you do, but for people who do not know who you are and what you do, who are you and what do you do?
Who am I? Well, maybe we'll get into that.
Mm.
In terms of my working role, excuse me, I am a freelance or self-employed videographer and photographer, mostly working with small businesses. Um, So in terms of the video, that would be social media campaigns, social media videos, website videos, and on the photography side, that is mostly brand photography, kind of day in the life. Again, images that go on websites, images that go on social media, and alongside that, drone footage as well. So drone video and photography. Yeah.
Now that is an interesting one. The whole drone thing, that's a very new world to me. Maybe we could go there in terms of the evolution of what you do. But I mean, what got you into the world of pictures?
Sorry, mate. I'm going to make sure there's gaps either way so you can cut this out. Oh, God, blimey. Right, I'm set. So, what got me into it? Okay. So, yeah, good question. The origin story, I suppose.
Why not?
Yeah. It probably started without me knowing when I was, sort of about five, six, or seven, something like that, where myself and my brother used to make our own films basically on my dad's camcorder that he would buy and just never do anything with. So we would go out at weekends and we would essentially it would always be the same film. I was the good guy, he was the bad guy. I was sleeping in the lounge, he would burgle me, and then it would be a revenge movie about me chasing him up the road and sort of getting my own back basically. So it was pretty limited story, but we had some good times. And so that's where the I suppose the love of film came. But then I kind of left it alone really. Always did photography. Was always taking my camera on holidays, that kind of stuff. But never saw it as anything more than just something that I enjoyed. But my creative, I suppose my creative side, growing up from about 13 or 14, was in bands and in music, playing drums in a few bands, and never made it that far, but got on the radio a couple of times, did a couple of tours, that kind of thing, living the dream, when you're that age. Well, obviously that was, early 20s, thinking we could make it. Well, obviously we never did. But that was where the creative side sort of took on. And then I kind of sort of not fell out of love with music, but I didn't really play it too much. I always played the drums, I still play the drums now, but never in a sort of a serious way. And then sort of fast forward to about 10 years ago, where started thinking about the business in terms of photography, just stills, because again, love of music pulled me back in. Got asked to shoot a gig, and absolutely loved it. Like the first moment I sort of got what you'd call a proper digital camera in my hand, I thought, wow, there's something in this, and just sort of followed that and then built the business. So that was about 9, 10 years ago, and here we are now. Shortly after that, built in video, and I do more video than photography now.
Okay.
Love video. Yeah, it's completely flipped just because of the way the market is and what clients want, essentially. But love it all, really. Love the creative process. find it completely knackering and quite difficult sometimes, but wouldn't change it for anything. And myself, well, this is a good example. So you know how you have these funny conversations with your partner, and myself and my wife was walking, and we said, so what if we were talking about winning the Euro Millions, as you do, and what would you do? And she said, would you give up work? And I said, I can honestly say I wouldn't give up work. I would change it and just do amazing projects, but it would always be along the lines of film, photography, creativity, just because, that's one of my great loves in life.
Amazing. I just learned something about you. I didn't know you were a drummer.
Afraid so. Yeah. In fact, look, I know a lot of people will be listening, but I have drumsticks always on my desk. So, for instance, if I've got like a 5-10 minute break, I'll just do a couple of rudiments in the air, just sort of keep loose. It's good for the soul. It is.
Well, I have to say, like, anyone who knows me knows my background is also as a session drummer. So
I didn't. So, well, there you go.
There
and
we
I
go.
didn't
Let
know
me
about
just
that
know that.
because I've always just seen you with a guitar.
Yeah. So my background is actually playing drums. First instrument,
Wow.
first love. I don't play much anymore. It's life finds a way. I'm kind of out of that thing, but there's sticks in the house. Always. Never leaves you,
Good
does
stuff.
it? It never leaves you.
No, it is in the blood, isn't it? And yeah, it's strange actually because, and there's definitely a lesson in here somewhere. But always when I was early 20s, just the absolute goal was making it, whatever that was. Making a living from it, I suppose. And you just, and of course, I loved it, and I've made some great mates and still in touch with them now and have some amazing times. But then coming back to it when there's no pressure, coming back to it where you're just practicing because you love it, and you're just creating stuff for the love, without any goal, without anything like that. Maybe I'm in a band now. Maybe we record like once a year, a couple of songs, but it's just doing it because you love it makes so much difference, rather than I'm doing it because of this.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's probably the only negative of running a business where before the business you loved it, and at times that love can be taken away because you're being not made to do it. Of course, everybody's got a choice, but you're creating for other people all the time. Now that is the ultimate first world problem. I realise that, and I've put myself in that position. But that's the only drawback to running a business where you love what you do, is that the actual thing maybe loses a bit.
That's a really interesting one. I think a lot of people who are in a similar position to you and I and our peers, I think they would relate to that tremendously, because the things we do, whether it's design, photography, content writing, whatever, we can't really put it down because it is the thread that runs through us. I think if you were a professional drummer, if you were teaching drums, whatever, it'd be running through you 24/7. So I wonder then, how do you keep yourself? There's two sides. That how do you keep it alive for yourself? And then follow-up question: how do you keep it interesting as a business?
Okay, so the creative side then, keeping that alive. At the very start, I always said I would keep personal projects going, whatever that would be, which is, I'm not the first one to say that, and I won't be the last. It's obviously very important. The only problem with that is and everybody's different, of course. Some people may be able to do 40, 50, 60 hours of work on their business and then do that in their spare time. But I found myself after a few years thinking, maybe it got to Saturday or Sunday, and I didn't have any work on, well, I didn't really want to pick up a camera,
Mm.
actually, and I didn't really want to sort of put myself in that position. I wanted to do other things. So that was a bit of a bit sort of, I wrestled with myself there a bit. I'm now at the stage where I completely love what I do, and the creative stuff in my business is enough. And so I very rarely now, which is a shame actually, but I don't really have personal projects on the go at the moment.
Hmm.
Now that of course could change. The lovely thing is that I may get a wave of inspiration in 6 months, in a year, where I'm just thinking, yeah, this is the one. But for now, I'm just sort of going with the fact that I need a bit of a break from the creative stuff, and I find that if over the last few months, this is quite a new thing actually. Over the last few months, I've really kind of thought about when I do my best work, and when I do my best work is when I'm um, I'm just very satisfied in my business and in life. And so working backwards from that, well, how do I do that? And so much of it, me personally, is down to my energy, and actually not over, basically not saying yes to lots of stuff
Mm.
and spreading myself too thin, and really concentrating on the quality, not quantity, of everything. And that's not just in work, that's conversations that I'm having, that's one-to-ones. If I'm on a one-to-one, I'm on that one-to-one. I'm
Mm.
not thinking I've got to do this, I've got to do that. And actually just managing my energy day to day, seemingly as it stands, is made a huge difference in terms of how happy I am in life, really, rather than just always feeling a bit tired. And you know what it's like if you're tired, and I know you've got loads of stuff going on in your life too.
Mm.
When you're tired and you're kind of just chasing your tail, it's so difficult to be at your best creatively.
Oh, that's a hefty one. Yes, it is. Absolutely. Um, do you find it's a bit of a, is dichotomy the right word, between needing to do the stuff, and I fully support the quality over the quantity. Like I don't think anybody should be taking on more than they A can, and B that doesn't delight them. But I mean, how do you balance that out when maybe it's been a bit of a quiet couple of months and some projects come along? You're going to give it your best, but you know that the actual work might not be the best. How does that sit with you?
I think that's yeah, that's a great way to put it. And I've never sort of thought of it like that. I will give it my best, but it won't be my best because of everything that's going on. So that makes great sense, actually. Um, I think I think well, you mentioned when it's quiet, because that's the test.
Yeah.
That's the real test. It's very easy to kind of easier to manage stuff if you're busy, but when it's quiet, um, that's the difficulty. I think so much of it from me comes from experience
Hmm.
of just having a few cycles of being very, very busy and very, very quiet, and knowing that if you stretch that period long enough, it's all the same in terms
Yeah.
of numbers, in terms of jobs, and mostly, because the more the bigger period of time, the more things average out. So I think with experience, I don't get too up and I don't get too down. When things are going well, I don't think, right, this business, like, I've sorted it, completed it, let's move on. When things are quiet, I feel like I've been around long enough and I know enough people, because that's what essentially I think it comes down to, your network, um, that I can lean on enough people to sort of see me through. And also going back to quality, not quantity, there was, when was it now? 18 months ago now. I always remember it was November, and I was looking forward to the December, and I was really, really quiet. And I thought, God, this is actually quite scary.
Mm.
And I remember a client coming back to me that I'd done some work for, and she said, "Oh, we loved the work you did before. Are you available in December?" and obviously I played it cool. I said, "Oh, I'll see if I can squeeze you in," knowing full well that I had some free days. But that was a huge deal for me in terms of a eureka moment, because at that moment I thought it is quality, not quantity. It really is. You do a good job and you'll be fine. Now, at the very start, things are totally different in business. But when you're established, I think that if you know enough people and your work is good, things tend to work out. So quality, not quantity, is sort of what I try and stick to. And also, I think that this is a conversation that I've had a lot in terms of balancing the business side and the creative side. And what can often happen, and what's happened to me in the past, is that if you're doing project work a lot, you're not marketing, because generally speaking, unless you want to work 12, 14 hours a day. But now I've switched that in my own head, and if I'm doing project work, if I'm making that the best it can be and I'm fully focused on that, that's my marketing, because that customer will come back and that customer will refer. So that makes me feel a bit better if I'm not doing too much marketing.
Interesting what you say about the early years, because that's the first year you are self-employed is probably the most exciting, the most terrifying all at once, right? The second year, also really hard, and I think probably until you get up to the sort of the beginning of the third year of running your thing, it doesn't even start to feel like it's getting easier. Like, what point for you did you feel that easing? Because I'm not about working 10, 12, 14-hour days. No, sir. But I know that there are people who are like, yeah, we'll just graft, we'll just grind, we'll do the thing. Like, at what point for you does the quality stop?
Excuse me. I did leave a gap there, though, so it's all good. Right. Well, the early days, I will wholly admit that I was overworking. I was doing far too many hours, but at the time, it didn't feel like that, because everything's new, everything's exciting. The moment you get a green light from a client, it's like, wow, this is amazing. And so, the hustle culture that was prevalent, a few years ago, which is pretty poisonous, but I don't mind admitting that came around, that was when I was starting my business. I was fully immersed in that, and I sort of, was working silly hours really till late at night, early. But the great thing about that is that, firstly, I wasn't burnt out because I loved it, and I think that's a huge thing. And also, it sets a foundation for the rest of the business. So my goals now for the business, and that's like going back one step. That's the amazing thing about having your own business, is that I think your goals will constantly change. So the first 2 or 3 years, I had this sort of golden target in mind in terms of what I wanted to do, and then I was very lucky to get there, which is amazing. And then think, okay, well, now I'm here. Now what? And so now it's totally different. I've still got what I need to earn for myself and for my family and things, which of course that's pretty normal. But now I'm really looking at, I'm not looking at the money essentially now. What I'm looking at is what you just said really, can I work less? But again, we come back to the same thing. Can I do more quality work over the quantity? And that means, and it's happened over the last few months, being quite precious with my pricing in terms of, I feel like, and this took years and years and years, because, and I still feel, like an imposter sometimes, but imposter syndrome's a thing when it comes to pricing, and imposter syndrome is a thing when it comes to competition that you see around you. So, and valuing potentially yourself or your services can be really difficult. So getting my head around that, and knowing that with those decisions about pricing, potentially you're going to do less work. But again, going back to averaging out over the year, as long as you can earn the same but work slightly less and get a better work-life balance, that's the goal. So for the next 2 or 3 years, just to see where I can get to with a really nice kind of flow and balance in terms of work and life. I'm not sure what the original question was, Tom. Apologies.
No, it's fine. This is why we go down these routes, because I think it comes down to a lot of that balancing out the quality work with the time when you're not working at all. And I say not working at all because we're still in the business, aren't we? You know, we're doing the marketing, we're showing up at the networking events, we're taking calls with people. We can still be picky about that. And, you know, selective, strategically selective, we'll say, to make it sound nice rather than just being picky. Because our time is precious. So, yeah, the quality comes across, I think, maybe how you conduct the whole business as much as just the projects that you do.
Yes. Hopefully. I mean, that's absolutely that's the goal. Ideally, I've got a sort of a theory about being whatever you would term successful in business, whatever that means.
I want to hear it.
Well, no, and it's probably very old, and it's probably been said by lots of people. But I think there's sort of two. This is very simplistic, by the way, but there's two ways to be whatever you would deem successful in your own business, and that is to be absolutely world class.
Okay.
At the actual action, at the actual creative act, or be world class at the personal skills and the experience you give people. If you're absolutely world class at what you do, you'll get hired whatever, because people will be so impressed with that, they will look at your work and go, yeah, that is the person I need to go to, whatever happens. I don't care if they're an arsehole. That is the person, because they get it. I think as long as your work is good enough, but you give the experience from literally beginning to end, and you're lovely to work with, and you're polite, and your personal skills are on point, and you're empathetic, and you've got all these things wrapped up. If you're world class at that, then I think the level of work can actually come down.
Yeah. Because
people still will see the whole experience as a good thing. I think where people get into difficulty is there's a huge amount of reasons for this, but maybe their work isn't as good as they need it to be, and their customer skills and their people skills aren't too good. So they're not brilliant at one thing. And so so what happens then potentially is you get lack of a repeat work, lack of referrals, and anybody that's been in business, that is the lifeblood. That's if you can get referrals and you can get repeat work, you've got a very good chance of doing okay. So being world class at either the people skills or your level of work, I think you're in a good position.
That's interesting. 'Cause I know a lot of people are quite self-deprecating when it comes to how good they are. Maybe those who know that they are world class are probably the only people maybe who would either they would say they are, or they absolutely wouldn't say they are, and they just show up and do it. So that's the thing. My little lamp's just gone off. I'm going to take a very brief pause, otherwise I'm going to be in the dark. If not, it'll be fine. So yeah, the people who then it's an interesting thing, because I think something especially that's come out in the last few years is a lot of people have suddenly decided that they can do a lot of different things.
Okay.
The whole, because we can go online with everything, And maybe this is very condescending of me, I'm not sure, but it feels like that the baseline has been lowered in terms of what people will actually accept as good, which then makes everyone feel much more successful. Good thing. That's good. We want people feeling like they're doing good. But then it sort of makes it even harder for those who are genuinely really freaking good at the thing they do to stand out.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I mean, I would agree with that, but I would say that from a personal point of view, I've always seen. I certainly don't see my work as world class. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And I certainly don't want people to think that I think my personal skills are world class. What I was saying is the theory that to be successful. But I think that the standard maybe has lowered, but I think what that does is, if you're reasonably cheap and cheerful, but your business model accommodates that, there's going to be a place for you, and there's going to be a place that clients can engage. So I think it comes down to really, really honest reflection on you as a person and the skills that you have and what you deliver. Because there's some people that I speak to, and there's a person that completely comes to mind. Their work is exceptional, but they don't recognise it. There's also other people that I think, looking at their work, is pretty substandard in a lot of ways, yet they think it's amazing. Now that's a big problem. Both of those are big problems for different reasons. So self-awareness. Pardon?
So yes, absolutely.
Okay. Yes,
that's a problem.
Yes, it's huge. So both of those things for different reasons are big issues, and so it comes down to age probably as well. I mean, I'm hitting very close to hitting 40, and I think most people with a shred of reflection, shudder about how they were when they were younger. And so I think that as you get older, what hopefully happens is you get slightly wiser, and you're just a better person overall, because you know a bit more about life. And part of that is self-awareness, and part of that is knowing what you are okay at and what you need to work on. And that seeps into everything, because the wonderful thing about the wonderful and scary thing, I suppose, about being self-employed is, however much you try and get a work-life balance, your identity is tied up in what you do and in your business. And I think the people, and ideally you don't want it tied up, but it just happens because that's what you do a lot of the time, and your identity is tied up in that. So the more you can separate that, and the more aware you can be, and the more reflective you can be, the better, because you'll just see where the red flags are in your life and also in your business. And then you go up a level, and then you're talking to different people, and then you're doing different projects, and then you go up a level, and then you can see how that is. But that is only possible, I think, is if you're really, really good at reflection and being aware of everything that's in your life.
I love that. I think you are right. Like, the older we get, the more aware we are of ourselves, our place in the world, our capabilities, the things we do like, the things we don't like, what we need, what we don't need. And you become very good, I would hope, at knowing context. Because we think about the people who, and I apologise to anyone, the ones who think they're better than they are, right? I think you often find that in younger people, partly because of the nature of competitiveness in certain spaces. The design space is very competitive, or it used to be. Like the coaching space is saturated with different types of people doing similar things. But as soon as we understand the context of our work and how that we are actually unique in what we do, regardless of whether we are quote unquote good or not, it levels that playing field, doesn't it? And it allows everyone to have a little win, feel like they are successful in their space, which then raises the baseline again, because it's all sort of plateauing and normalizing. So, yeah. Older, wiser, and able not to compete. I mean, how do you feel about that as a concept? Because I personally, and as a professional, I don't believe that we need to be competitive in our industries, because everyone can show up as a unique individual and offer something different to the clients we serve. But I mean, how does that show up for you?
Again, it's changed massively, because at the start I saw everything as a competition, and I think actually weirdly, and I wouldn't change this, because I think at the start of a business you don't have to be an arsehole, but you do need to be competitive, even if it's to yourself.
Yes.
About one thing I loved about the mentality of starting your own business is that if it fails, that's on me. If it's successful, that's on me. It's absolute accountability. Yes, of course, luck has a huge deal. Luck plays a huge role in business and in life. Of course it does. But it still comes back to what you can control. And so being competitive at the very start, I think I needed that. And I'm when I'm focused on something, I'm hyper focused, which I think is a massive, it's great if you're starting a business, because from the moment I got up to the moment I was going to bed, I was just focus. And so that got my business onto a reasonably good start. Now, so fast forward to now, and it's sort of gone the opposite way. And it's more about, like I was saying earlier, it's more about enjoying what's in front of me, enjoying the project that I have, rather than thinking, I'll be happy in this business when I've done this. I'll be happy in this business when I've done that. Because what happens with goals, I've realised, is that you're so set on it and you're so blinkered, you literally forget what's all around you. And it's of course it's a cliche about the journey and enjoying the journey, but that's the game, because the game isn't getting to your goal. Because if you're lucky enough to get to that goal, well, then you're going to set another goal anyway. So in my opinion, as it stands now, this could change in 6 months, but as it stands, as we sit here, the game is enjoying the process. The game is enjoying and being present on that project that you're doing. And if you do that, and if you're happy and content, you're going to do your best work, and we come back to it full circle. You're going to be producing quality work, and that's going to bring work. Because and so you get into that lovely rhythm of having goals, but realizing that's not the goal, if that makes any sense.
I get you.
It's about being present, and it's about really being focused on what's in front of you, because that's the only thing that essentially we can control, isn't it?
Yeah. And even then, it's the things of ours that are in front of us.
Yeah.
You know. I'm going to pull a very quick thread about your musical creativity, and maybe how that plays into what you do behind the camera. I mean, I know from playing in bands that it's a very collaborative experience. I mean, how has that stuff, as the sideline, helped shape what you do as a, photographer and videographer and a business person,
It's a good question. I suppose the short answer is I don't really know. I don't know what the crossovers are. I haven't. Yeah, I haven't. I don't want to say I haven't thought about it, but I haven't. I'm just trying to think if I've sort of thought, this piece of music that we're playing or this creative process has really affected other parts of my life, like the creative side, because they are quite separate. But what I would say is that whether it is music, whether it is doing something that even other people that wouldn't see as creative, everything overlaps. Everything, even if you don't know it, everything will influence everything else. So even to the point, this is a very simple example. Just say you have a brilliant weekend with friends or family, or you're doing hobbies that you want to do, and you're just and you just feel light. That would be the way I would describe it. You just feel light and settled, and your heart is light. Even if that's not creative, just say you're hitting a creative project on Monday. That is going to, because of your mindset and because of how potentially free your brain is, you're going to be at your most creative. So I wouldn't necessarily say that music in itself has had a huge impact on my videography or photography. But what I would say is the stuff that I do outside of my business seeps in. However, I am a huge fan of album covers, and I'm always looking, especially vinyls, I'm always looking at the photography and the design and everything like that. So I think, of course, that's a very specific thing, but there's something that I can take influence from in terms of the music. But in terms of the actual creativity, yeah, I'm not sure.
And that's okay. And that's okay.
Exactly. But that's it. Why that's interesting, you saying that's okay and me saying, yeah, that is okay, is that if you had spoken to me 5 years ago or 10 years ago and given me that question, I would feel that in my head I'll be thinking, right, Tom's asked me about this and I'm a creative, and a creative person needs to say this, and in order for me to look legit in front of all the people that are going to listen to this, I need to say this, and I can't say, well, I don't really agree with that because I'm a creative. And so I think that when you first start in the creative industry, there's a huge amount of, I don't know, boxes that you feel that you have to fit into, and that ties in with your identity. And now, because I am a bit more settled in my life and business and things, I'm slightly more open-minded about it, and the fact that literally everybody is completely different, and will work through things in a totally different way. I hope that makes some kind of sense.
That absolutely does. Absolutely, and I think more people need to hear that your individuality can allow you to be settled wherever you're at, and it will show up as it needs to, and so can you.
I think there was a podcast that I listened to. This was about a year ago, and I don't really listen to the podcast too much anymore because it well, for whatever reason, I don't listen to it anymore. But it was a high performance podcast. I don't know if you've heard that.
Yeah, I have.
Okay, so it's sort of sporting people and people that are at the top of their game, and it does have some value, and I did enjoy it for a while. But there was one episode with Johnny Wilkinson, the ex-rugby player, and if anybody, even if you don't like rugby, even if you don't like sport, if you listen to that episode, that will change the way you look at stuff, because he's completely changed the way he looks at sport, creativity, all these things. And a really good example of that is So for anybody who doesn't know, he won the Rugby World Cup, and he actually kicked the drop goal to win it.
Yep.
And he famously said in this episode that he now looks at that, he cannot differentiate that from doing the washing up, because what are you doing on a rugby field? You are doing a physical thing to a goal. What are you doing washing up? You're doing a physical thing for a goal. The only difference is the labels that we give, is the emotions that we attach to that. And so he's gone through this huge journey about being present and about how to be happy, you kind of got to leave labels behind, and you've got to leave identities behind. And I think if more people did that early on, I think you'd probably be a bit more happier, and you'd probably have a better business. But maybe that just comes with time, and maybe that just comes with a bit of wisdom. I don't know. But anybody who hasn't listened to that podcast, I would highly recommend it. I had to listen to it back to back because, yeah, a lot of what he was saying I couldn't get my head around, but I have now.
Good. I will find it, and I will try to link it in the show notes, because it sounds like something
Great,
that everyone needs to hear. I do remember when he kicked that goal. I still remember watching it on TV.
Amazing. Yeah, he doesn't remember it though.
No.
He doesn't. And he also talks about flow, which is I think flow, especially in the creative sense, is completely fascinating. And he goes through this process, and hopefully everybody listening to this would have gone through their own kind of flow where you're just in it and there's nothing else around you. And he just talks so openly about he can't even remember it. It was an out of body experience for him. And what an incredible thing that is.
Well, that feels like a superb note on which to round out this conversation, because we've been in the flow. Our time has ticked on. So,
we have.
For anyone who would like to have a chat with you, get to know you a bit better, and, maybe do some work with you as well, how can they find you? How can they get in touch?
Well, the easiest way would probably be LinkedIn or an email.
Awesome.
I am, as you know, Tom, running a business, you wear many hats and you spin many plates. One of those plates that often falls to the floor is social media, and to the point where I'm not even worried about it anymore. So because I don't want to be doom scrolling for half an hour, so I'd much rather it be a bit more strategic about it. But LinkedIn is the platform that I'm active most on, so if just searching my name, but anybody who's listened to this and wants to chat or wants to work or whatever, or wants to say that I've spoken absolutely no sense over the last 45 minutes, that's also fine, because I'm reflective now, and I will take that on board. Anyway, so that would be benjaminfilmphotography@gmail.com. I've also got a website, www.benjaminfilmphotography.co.uk.
And there we have it. Well, Ben, thank you so much. This has been an absolute joy, and there's lots of stuff to take away and reflect upon.
An absolute pleasure, Tom. Thank you, mate.